Welcome back. Mark Pocan, Congressman Mark Pocan on the line with us, taking your calls for the hour. And Nettie in Shiocton, Wisconsin. Am I saying that right, Nettie?
Yes, you got it right this time, Tom.
Okay, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Congressman, we talked last week. This week I want to talk to you about single payer. Obamacare helped millions of us get insurance, like my husband and myself, who are self-employed. But there are millions of others that don't have insurance at all. We need a single-payer system to get us all insured. Thank you.
Yeah, Nettie, I agree. And, in fact, good news this week. We had a press conference. I believe it was yesterday. I have to admit my days blur when I'm up here a little bit. But John Conyers has a Medicare for All bill, and we had a press conference, and we wanted to announce that we now have 111 sponsors, more than it's ever had before on that bill. So I think a lot of this debate has clearly shown where we need to move as a country. And the fact that 111 sponsors is at its peak. The 111th person who just signed on was our caucus chair, Joe Crowley from New York. And I think what we're seeing is it's not just the progressives in the caucus. It's a lot of people who see this is the path forward. And I think, again, this is part of the debate that's coming out of their terrible health care bill, what we needed to fix with the Affordable Care Act, and then maybe if people are coming around to, look, this is a right. You shouldn't go bankrupt because you're sick. Everyone deserves to have this in a country like the United States.
Amen. Peter in Vine Grove, Kentucky. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, thank you both for taking my call, and thank you, Mr. Hartmann, for fighting the good fight in the trenches. Sometimes I know it probably feels alone out there. Congressman Pocan, very quickly, sir, since you're with the progressives, is there any way that you guys could distribute this message that you're sharing with Mr. Hartmann, disseminate it more in detail to the rural areas, especially I'm in Kentucky. I'm in enemy territory, as you probably guessed, and with Mitch McConnell. But if there's some way you guys could just disseminate the message on a greater, at a more localized, boots on the ground manner, because a lot of people still don't know the ins and outs of what you and Mr. Hartmann are talking about in greater detail. And I'll get off the air, and thank you both for your service and your efforts.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And I live in a rural part of Wisconsin, a town of under 900 people. So I appreciate what you're saying. So let me answer it in two different ways. First, Congressional Progressive Caucus has social media. So we have a Facebook page. We have Twitter accounts. We have ways that you can get a lot of this information. We posted live the Medicare for All press conference on there. We post a lot of these issues. I think I did a video explaining the Trump budget. That's on there. So please use the social media. You can live anywhere, although, granted, we know broadband isn't where it needs to be, high-speed broadband everywhere. Hopefully that solves some of it. The second thing, one of the initiatives we're doing, just recently, a couple states, Florida and California, have formed a progressive caucus in their state legislatures, and we're working with folks at SIX, which is a progressive group for state legislators and for local elected officials, to figure out how to have more progressive caucuses. So I'm doing a meeting in Wisconsin next week with folks, and we're going to kind of make sure that we're duplicating what we've done for a while now at the national level in more spots across the country. So eventually you might have a progressive caucus in Kentucky for your state and local elected officials, and they can help get that information out as well.
Okay. Joe in Kent, Washington. Excuse me, listening on 91.3 in Seattle. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan. Joe?
Yes.
You're on the air.
Okay. Yeah, this is Jay. I'm in Linton, but I wanted to talk about the gerrymandering. We've got to fight to get our democracy back, and I think that's one of the steps. And my thoughts is if we could somehow put the first priority of forming districts as a school district, because they have the same general principles and lifestyle as their neighbors are going to the schools. And also, I wanted to ask if your thoughts on it, and if there was a way that we could do this, and if a way that the public would have to watch out for the Republicans fighting it.
Great, Joe. I'll tell you, gerrymandering to me is one of the top issues if we are going to, move forward and have fair elections. I think what we've seen happen post 2010, where 71, I think it is, Democrats in the House and Senate lost nationally, hundreds of state legislators lost, and then we had redistricting where politicians decided to pick their voters rather than voters picking their elected officials, and we've got to address the issue. I think the best way are these citizen panels that are doing it in places like Iowa and California. You take it away from politicians because there's national standards they have to follow, but if you have it done by someone who's not directly affected by the lines, you're going to have more fair lines. The only problem you might have just using school lines, Joe, is that every state is different. In Wisconsin, we have 426, or we used to have 426 different school districts. So some states have larger jurisdictions, some have smaller. That might be a bit tricky, but there are principles we have to follow. And if you allowed citizen panels to do that, I think that would be one of the strongest ways we could address gerrymandering.
Okay. Jim in Lombard, Illinois. Jim, we have just a minute and a half here. Real quick question for the Congressman.
Okay, I just have a statement. My assessment of the Republican leadership is that they are sycophants to billionaires and sadistic to working class and poor people. They follow the dictates of Machiavelli, Draco, and the Marquis de Sade. I would like to know if you agree or disagree with that statement.
Jim, I think what I would point to is their health care bill takes away health care and gives tax breaks the tune of $600 billion to the wealthiest in this country. I think what you and I are saying are just a little bit different semantically.
Yeah, Marquis de Sade is rather colorful, but I didn't see 50 Shades of Gray in the House Republican budget, although maybe that's the Republican idea of psychotherapy. I'm not sure. It's
they cut mental health funding, so I don't know.
Yeah. We have 30 seconds to the hard break here, Congressman. Further thoughts on this? This is really not a health care bill. This is really a $600 billion tax cut for the top 1%, is it not?
Absolutely. And Paul Ryan, I know very well. I share a county with him. We have neighboring districts. He has always been about doing tax reform, and this is the first step they need to do to lower the corporate rate so that they could give even more money back to their corporate benefactors. And that's what this bill's about, and the byproduct just happens to be 23 million people lose insurance.
Yeah, amen. Sabrina in Delta, Colorado. Sabrina, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, thank you. I'm from western Colorado. We're the ghetto with a view here because our economy's really not doing very well.
Oh, my.
But at any rate, this new health care bill, I call it Trump death care bill. And I just don't understand, and they never tell you how much you're allowed to make. I'm self-employed. I just got kicked off Medicaid. And, I clean houses for a living. And I'll tell you, if you're self-employed, they scrutinize you. And I figure since Obama's going out the door, Obamacare is going out the door, I'm just not going to reapply. I figure I'll get Medicare in about 3 years, so I might as well just go without.
Just hope you don't get sick. That's pretty terrible.
Yeah, well, one thing, Obamacare did help me get my cataract surgery last year so I could keep working.
Sabrina, what's your question for the Congressman?
What are we going to do about this president? I mean,
okay.
He's awful.
Great. Congressman, thank you, Sabrina.
Yeah, I'll tell you, before I answer that, let me just say, Sabrina, it's going to be a while before the Affordable Care Act isn't in existence because this is still the plan the House passed. The Senate may not go in the same direction. They'll have to go to conference committee. It'll have to go back to the House and the Senate. And if we're fighting hard enough, we're going to make it so that they're not going to be able to pass a bill that's this bad. So I don't want anyone not going. This is part of what they want, right, to put the misinformation so people don't sign up and people don't provide it because they're not sure the direction. But if you need health care, you need health care. So keep that in mind. I think what we're doing is we're just exposing the president and the Congress for what they're doing, whether it be the issue of health care, whether it be the issue of, I think, an infrastructure plan. We're going to see a ridiculous plan put forward by the administration that's going to be all about privatizing things and private roads and private bridges where they charge you a private toll, but it won't be across the country because they're not going to invest everywhere. No matter what it is, you're going to see that they have nothing planned for the middle class and those aspiring to be in the middle class. And I think if we can get this point across, and I think we are among independents especially, we're going to be able to turn this around in 2018. But we've got to realize elections have consequences.
Amen. Alan in Phoenix, Arizona, listening on 1480 AM in Phoenix.
Yeah, I want to mention that I saw the assistant director of ICE on 60 Minutes this Sunday, and he made the comment that we're a nation of laws. Truth is that we're a nation that decides which laws to enforce, when to enforce them, and who to enforce them against. We can't fix our problems until we acknowledge what the cause is. And, for example, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world, but not for corporate CEOs. Their criminal punishment is limited to the number of zeros on the check. And I just want to say that this show in the Ring of Fire is great for waking people up, but too many Americans are still hitting the snooze button.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congressman?
Alan, I hear you, and I think one of the real regrets I have of watching, there was starting to be some bipartisan efforts around criminal justice reform. People realizing, even Grover Norquist, I had about a 15, 20-minute conversation with one day. They may come at it for different reasons, but they realize that what we're doing around incarceration makes no sense. Obviously the nation that has the most people, people incarcerated, us and Russia are on top of the list. And we need to change that around, and there were some efforts to do that, and now they've all fallen aside. In fact, just the opposite. Under this Attorney General, they're moving back to the bad old days of how we started throwing people away in prison. So that's something we're still trying to address. But, I'm so glad that we've got, Thom's show, and we've got other efforts. We can get things across through social media. We can get things out there that if the corporate media doesn't pick them up because the 22 minutes that they have to sell detergent doesn't match the policies that we're talking about, we still have other ways to get that across, and we can still have those people-to-people conversations. That's where this is going to win. I've said it before on the show, and I truly believe this. It's a bumper sticker, and I hate to give bumper stickers, but if the people lead, eventually the leaders will follow. I've been doing this for 23 years in elected office, and I've seen this happen over and over. When the people really get organized and are fighting from the grassroots, we will win. It may take a little bit of time, but we always wind up coming out ahead. And right now, all the energy that's out there post Trump being inaugurated right now is being captured, and we're watching it with these 15 and 20-point swings in elections. So don't be pessimistic at all. Let's just make sure we're using that energy to contact your representatives, work with groups that are trying to enact change, because we are winning.
Cynthia in Seattle, Washington. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you very much, Congressman. I'm disabled. I'm 60 years old, and I worked for 40 years in law firms. And those law firms took the life right out of me, and I'm not able to function with a heart problem and mental problems. So I'm on Social Security disability, and I can't use a computer because I can't focus long enough. So I need to know what this budget is going to do to disabled people. I understand that Congress is cutting disability, or that's what the budget is, and that's an abomination. I can't imagine this. What is in fact happening? What will happen to disabled on Social Security? And one other thing I wanted to mention is affordable housing is non-existent everywhere. And in Seattle, I'm paying 90% of my Social Security just to pay rent. So affordable housing is a huge problem. I don't hear Congress and Senate addressing that. And I think we're paying all the money we have just to rent an apartment now. And the other third thing is Clinton took votes from Bernie, and it split the vote, and that was a dangerous thing to do. We needed one Democratic candidate against.
Cynthia, I'm going to drop you right there because we asked people to only have one topic, first of all, and I'm not sure that that's a topic. Anyhow, Congressman, your response.
Yeah, so I think there was a lot there, and if I can answer it maybe a little more generally, might be the most helpful. We've posted a video, and I know it's on the Progressive Caucus Facebook page. It's also on my page on Facebook, trying to hit some of the major winners and losers as you go through it. And within Social Security, there is a cut to get rid of some of the insurance that helps people with disabilities. That's one of the things that the Trump administration has proposed. I mean, the big winners out of the budget are the wealthiest Americans who see trillions of dollars in taxes cut, big corporations in Wall Street where they've slashed regulations for the big banks, and they're defunding the agency that protects consumers. Defense contractors, clearly, with $54 billion in new dollars spent on that. The border wall, $1.6 billion in a down payment to build the border wall. And polluters, they're rolling back environmental regulations. Those are the winners. But virtually everything else, from those cuts in Social Security that help people with disabilities to PBS, Meals on Wheels, the children's health insurance and Medicaid programs, school lunch programs, education. There's 20 programs cut from literacy to Special Olympics under this budget, and on and on and on. So I think we do have to focus a little more on that budget because in order to fund that money for defense, you're cutting virtually everything else that means things to people, including combating opioid addiction and other issues.
Yeah. So there's a long list of damages being done in this budget.
Absolutely.
Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. You can check out his website at pocan.house.gov, P-O-C-A-N. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. And we'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus.